Chapter 28. Shift. It was May, and we were all gathered around the grave. The priest had finished speaking. The final prayers and blessings had been offered. At that moment, three small, old Polish ladies, standing near Grandma's casket, started singing. I knew one of the ladies. She and her husband had been friends of my grandparents. Sometimes we would run into one or the other of them when I was a kid, walking to and from the store with Mom. Mr. M had always looked imposing and a bit scary to my young self. He was very tall, quiet and serious, with chronic dark circles under his eyes. Mrs. M was small and chatty and always so pleasant. "Hiya, Basha!" she would always greet Mum cheerfully. I didn't know the other ladies. I wish I knew what song those ladies had sung, but it was all in Polish. It was very poignant and beautiful, haunting really. Those three little sturdy fairy ladies, all around the same shorter height like Grandma. Grandma had long caused Mom a lot of torment, but her death, let me tell you, her death killed my mother. After the funeral and after the wake, I was back in suburban hell in my backyard the next day, on a beautiful, sunny, warm day, crying because I couldn't believe Grandma was gone. She had been the sturdiest, hardiest woman I could have imagined, walking everywhere for years, shoveling her whole driveway even when she was supposed to be old. Grandma, who loved to go to bingo and play the quarter slots at the casino. Grandma, who wouldn't drive anywhere if there was so much as a snowflake falling from the sky. Grandma, who loved a greasy takeout big crunch chicken sandwich and proclaimed it to be so delicious. Grandma, who could get an unrivaled look of disgust on her face over some people and the things they did, and spit out with great venom, "Such a stupid!" Everyone dies one day, and many, many people get cancer and die. But Grandma had always been so sturdy and, well, kind of round and just strong. Who knows, though? She never would talk much about her life before Canada. Who knows if she carried silent pain for the boyfriend she was forced apart from during the war? Who knows which men or man had prompted Grandma to definitively and emphatically say, "No more men's!" after Grandpa had died, and mean it for the next quarter century until her own death. But she was gone just the same. It seemed a little surreal. I started finding dimes everywhere in the time leading up to Grandma's death and after she died. It was crazy after a while how these stupid dimes would seem to pop out of nowhere. It was 2009, and Grandma's death was a part of a series of events that helped me get back home. Mum said once that I saw portent in everything, but even she had to admit that it all worked out a little too well. For the past year, Hubs had been gently trying to say that his salary was barely covering us living in Suburbia. It was expensive to live there, no two ways about it. We weren't going to be able to pay for everything much longer. In February, Hubs was suddenly home from work early one day. The department store he worked for was slowly tanking, and people were being let go from head office. He was one of those people. And there he was, standing at home looking stunned and a little shell-shocked, with a bunch of his things from his desk. We were both quietly horrified. He had a severance package that would cover us for several months, so we would be okay in the meantime while he looked for a job, but it was stressful. Then in the spring, Grandma died. My mom and her siblings found it all overwhelming, so Grandma's house was sitting vacant. In summer, Hubs finally got the interview he needed and got a new job. His new boss didn't care where he worked from, as long as his work got done. He also didn't care if he lived in a city over an hour away from the office, as long as he came in from time to time. Hubs would be able to work from home. We were offered Grandma's house. Mum suggested we come have a walkthrough first, just to see if we actually wanted to live there. We came one summer night to see it. Of course, it was very familiar, but it was odd to find it so quiet, a little stuffy from being closed up, and just as Grandma had left it, with all of Grandma's things still in it, but no Grandma. It was when I went into the backyard, though, that did it for me. It was so quiet with this lovely, warm, summer evening breeze coming through. I stood there and felt this comforting feeling that I absolutely could live there, that this was home. The timing really couldn't have been better. Houses suddenly started selling in Suburbia for a lot more money than what we'd paid 9 years before, but homes in my hometown were still comparatively a lot more affordable. We sold our little townhome for a goodly amount more than what we'd paid for it. We were going to come out much, much farther ahead than where we had been. We would be back in my town in the fall, 9 years after I'd left. When I was moving to Suburbia, I was nervous and very sad to be leaving, and I had promised myself that I would be back in 5 years. It was my 5-year plan. I hadn't made my original deadline, but I was heading back just the same. Dad was giddy with excitement that we would be moving mere minutes away from where he and Mum were living, and less than 10 minutes' drive from my siblings, who were very happy too. Hubs's poor family? Not so much. Mum was nervous. She was never relaxed about anything, and now she had worries about everything. Her parents' house was too old. It wasn't as new and modern as our townhome. Old houses come with their own problems. The house would need some renovations, etc., etc. She might have been more relaxed if we were moving back to a house that had no personal ties to her, I guess. Also at that time, the government was offering money to people who qualified to upgrade old houses to be more energy efficient. This town is probably full of big, freezing old houses that have little to no insulation. This house had little to no insulation, and it just seemed like that's how it was. Grandma's house was freezing. Mum would come back from a visit complaining how frozen she'd be after visiting Grandma, which was kind of saying a lot since our family home had always been on the cooler side. Mum couldn't stand a hot house. I've grown up the same. When I walk into someone's house and it's warm enough in winter to wear a t-shirt comfortably, it actually freaks me out a bit and makes me feel almost panicky for someone to crack a window a bit. Like, it's not healthy or something to be that hot and that airtight. So while I was busy packing up the whole house in suburban hell, Dad was very busy getting insulation pumped into our walls and getting the basement insulated. 9 years of loneliness and battling each day with an often very difficult little guy on the autism spectrum along with a toddler were coming to an end. I thought that moving back home would solve all my woes. It was naive, but I guess I didn't realize that homesickness could mean a lot more than I thought at the time. I did make one friend the last year before we'd moved. She was a lovely woman from Sri Lanka. Her English wasn't the best, but we'd drop our kindergartners off at school, and we'd go for walks with our toddlers in their strollers. I liked her very much, and I was sad to say goodbye to her in the end. But the wheel of fate was turning, and I was moving determinedly and excitedly forward. I didn't know that I would only have almost exactly 5 months left with my mother.